Excuse me for that. Thank goodness my producer Frank Mazzio noticed that, or we would have had another ventriloquist broadcast. Anyway, this is Frank Fortunato. It's a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Thursday, May 26, 2011. If you need to contact us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX overseas, or AOL instant mail address is CATEX-TV. On this day in 1977, George Willig, who was an adventurer and a mountain climber, climbed the South Tower of the World Trade Center, a 110-story building. He climbed the exterior facade using a contraption or a device he had manufactured himself to fit into the slats on the exterior of the building. It took him about 2.5 or 3 hours, if I remember correctly. I was driving around at that time in New Jersey, and it was breaking news every 5 or 10 minutes, a man climbing the World Trade Center. He was promptly arrested by the New York City police when he reached the top of the building. He was subsequently released. We have some other news, and we'll get to it right now. Well, one of the most notorious war criminals, certainly since World War II, has been apprehended in Serbia. Ratko Mladic, Europe's most wanted war crime suspect, has been arrested after years in hiding. Serbia has been under intense pressure to catch the fugitive. He's been on the run since 1995, when he was indicted by the UN War Crimes Tribunal for genocide in the slaughter of about 8,000 Bosnian Muslims in Srebrenica, and for other crimes committed by his troops during the Bosnia Civil War 92 to 95. Mladic will now be extradited to the UN War Crimes Court in The Hague in the Netherlands. The extradition process is underway right now. Mladic personally led his troops in the Serb onslaught against the UN-protected enclave of Srebrenica. Thousands of Muslim men and boys were killed there, and the town's name has become nearly synonymous with the horrible bloodshed of the Balkan War. There's an interesting event going on in Europe right now. The G8 is at Deauville, little beautiful resort of the wealthy and rich on the English Channel in France. Meanwhile, here you see Mark Zuckerman and Eric Schmidt, Google's executive chairman. This is Mark Zuckerberg, excuse me. We're meeting yesterday with President Sarkozy in France. They were both warning governments to tread lightly on internet regulation. At the conclusion of a 2-day meeting in Paris, their comments exposed deep differences between tech titans and policymakers, even as they tried to agree on a message that they're going to take to the world leaders at the Group of 8 meeting today in France. Despite a glittering guest list, including people like Zuckerberg and Eric Schmidt, the recommendations that came out were mostly vague. The outcome highlights the difficulty of finding a way to regulate the internet that's acceptable to governments, industry, and civil society. In a speech to the EG8, that's what they're calling it, the EG8, Sarkozy stressed the role that the state should play in the context of what he called the total revolution of the internet. Good luck with that. In Istanbul this morning, a bomb blast at rush hour wounded 8 people at a bus stop close to a police school. It wasn't known yet who was responsible or why the bomb was planted. Istanbul police are saying the blast was caused by a medium power explosive attached to an electric bicycle, detonated at about 9 a.m. local time. The blast was in the residential Atelier district, a favor for Istanbul's expatriates and bankers, and close to a police training school. Turkish election campaigns are in full swing. There's an election on June 12th. There have been a series of violent attacks. On Monday, the Turkish police discovered a bomb under a bridge along Prime Minister Erdogan's planned bus route. So there's a lot going on there. Stock market is down again, but the New York Mets seem to have picked a potential $200 million investor. He's going to be David Einhorn, the hedge fund president. Einhorn is also in the news because he's saying that Microsoft should replace Steve Ballmer as their CEO. Stock market is down 42 points. We'll go to a word from our sponsor. This is our friend Tony Belisle. Belisle is the founder and Chief Executive Officer of the collateralized reinsurer CATCO. And Mr. Belisle landed a pretty big fish. UK-based global insurer Prudential is one of their new investors. The Pru has disclosed an 11.75% share in the CATCO Reinsurance Opportunities Fund. CATCO recently raised about $122 million from the new share issue. If you include that with the $80 million it took in on its launch, and then $7.25 million it raised from existing investors in March, they're up to over $200 million. The publicly listed fund is a feeder fund into CATCO's main investment pool. The shares are now going to be listed in a secondary listing on the Bermuda Stock Exchange. Our friend Greg Wojciechowski, CEO of the BSX, said that it was very apparent that Bermuda and the BSX could act to accelerate the convergence between insurance and the capital markets. Tizer in London had some interesting news. Their pre-tax profits more than doubled. The parent company of Tigers, Hawke's Bay Holdings, more than doubled its pre-tax profits in 2010. This is despite the continuing pressures of the soft market. Information revealed by UK Company House shows that Hawke's Bay generated pre-tax profits of £2.67 million. It's up about £1.15 million from the year before. Tigers is 100% owned by Hawke's Bay. Commenting on the big difference, Tigers Chief Operating Officer Quentin Heaney said, "We're pleased with our performance in 2010, especially as market conditions remain soft. Our margins have grown from a low base, although there is still some way to go to get on a par with many of our peer group." Congratulations to Tigers and to Mr. Heaney. Here's a story that's coming out of eastern China right now. Explosions are being reported at 3 government buildings in the eastern Chinese city of Fuzhou. It's up in Jiangxi province. Apparently the blasts were nearly simultaneous. There were 3 of them. Reports are indicating that 3 explosions occurred within about 30 minutes of each other. A car exploded outside the prosecutor's office. 10 minutes later, another bomb went off at a district government building. And 15 minutes after that, a car exploded outside of a drug administration office. There are no suspects in custody yet. This is indicative of what's been going on in this area of the country, where the social disorder is being disrupted by mass migration into the urban areas. One observer said, and this was a man on the street apparently interviewed, "There are plenty of people complaining about the government, but the government just ignores the complaints. They've ignored mine." People respond sometimes differently. And this is in a country that is nearing the similar credit rating to the United States, no less. I can't quite believe that. Well, it's always interesting watching American presidents travel overseas. President Obama was on a 4-nation European trip. He went to Ireland and then Britain, and then he's in France now, and then he's heading to Poland. When he was in Britain, let's get a couple look at these pictures here. Here he is playing table tennis with Prime Minister Cameron. And then go to the next one. We have a picture of, I don't know what's going on there. I think that was like a high five after they scored a point. The Prime Minister obviously was a little unclear as to what to do. It looks like he's, I don't know quite what. And then there's the Prime Minister with a rather bemused look on the President's face, if not outright startledness. And then here's the previous day in Ireland. This is the President drinking his pint of Guinness Stout. So it's tough being a world leader. You have to constantly find yourself put in these rather uncompromising situations and just make the best of it and put on your game face and go through it. There are no pictures yet as to any unusual candid shots coming from France, nor have there been any shots planned in Poland, but that's the beauty of these things. They're relatively spontaneous. So we'll keep our eyes on that. We like to follow these things. If we get anything interesting, we'll show it to you. If we have any breaking news, we'll come back and tell you. If not, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.